Have you seen clips from her 2.5-hour interview? Well, Belly Bean, we're about to watch it. And if you want the pain to end, 40 subs. Hello, yes. Yes, you are a little bundle of anxiety because of fireworks. I know. It's hard. It's hard being a dog. It's hard being a dog. The video from Benny was eviscerating. Yeah. I think we'll watch this at 2.5 speed or 1.5 speed or 1.25. Let's try and get through it as fast as we can. Oh god. This is going to suck.
It's amazing. And we have, look, a special guest with us here today, Anna Kasparian, co-host of The Young Turks. Do you want to introduce yourself? I mean, I feel like everyone, our audience definitely knows who you are, but you're probably doing other things as well.
At the moment, I'm not. I'm mostly focusing on TYT. But yeah, I'm the executive producer and co-host of The Young Turks, and have been since 2007. And, I've done other things on the side at various points of my career. But for now, that's the main focus.
Okay, so we're very excited to have this conversation. We started talking a little bit before the show, and you seem open to talking about a lot of things. You seem to be going through kind of a political transformation, evolution. I don't really know the right word to call it, but I'll let you talk about that. But first of all, people want to know, because you did mention in our little chat in DMs that I was wrong about the Daily Wire thing. Now, I make predictions on the show all the time, and I have never been wrong before. So people, I've been making jokes about you might end up at the Daily Wire. That's not true?
No. It's funny because, I'm going through something very real and very sincere, and it's uncomfortable, and it has not been an enjoyable process for me. It's been difficult. And so the internet being what it is, all sorts of people from all sorts of political ideologies have theories on like what's actually happening with me, right? And the main accusation, both from the left and the right, is that I'm grifting, which is hilarious because literally nothing has changed.
Yeah, again, I don't think this is from grift. I think this is from this is coming from someplace else.
Changed about my work life. I'm in the same place. I have the same audience. The audience doesn't like some of what I have to say or some of the new conclusions I've come to. And so I wanted to kind of set the record straight about what I have personally experienced. I don't know what my political labels are at this point, right? Because I feel like I don't really fit anywhere. And that's just full honesty. It's, again, very uncomfortable for me. And I want to say that out of any point in my adult life, this is probably the point where I'm the most malleable and open to new information because of what I've experienced over the last few years. And I can get into details.
I just like, man, I don't think we're gonna get a how I left the left video, but we're in the first minute. That sounds pretty goddamn close, You're not, if you're not identifying as left or progressive, then what are you identifying as?
About that in just a moment. But that was the reason why I told Adam that no, this isn't like a Daily Wire thing. I have no interest in working at the Daily Wire. I have no interest in leaving TYT. If anything, I just feel responsibility to kind of correct what I got wrong in the past to the best of my ability and just do better moving forward. And the reason why I've been at TYT as long as I have is despite what any of you might think about Jake, he has never once tried to censor me or tell me what I can and can't say. That's the reason why, we get into these fiery debates and there's never any like retaliation for it. And as long as I'm free to speak my mind and genuinely speak my mind the way I have been, I plan on staying there. And there's absolutely no monetary or financial incentive for me to do anything I'm doing right now.
Well, Sitch and I box a lot on this show. And I think people, I think they like that. I think they admire that we are able to fight with one another over a policy position and still walk away friends. So I spent the last week, I was watching a bunch of your most recent videos. And I mean, you're snapping back at Jank quite often. I mean, it's actually quite refreshing. There's a couple things, and we have questions on these, but I'll let Sitch. I don't know. Do you have anything that you want to ask before we get started?
So yeah, it turns out that Anna is a massive fan of our program. She's like every episode, just huge fan, right?
Well, okay. So I happened to come across a video you guys did about me. It was the stream on. I hate to name names, but you guys were covering the leftist mafia and their insane gaslighting video about me. And you guys were the only ones, as far as I could see, that actually did a good job in highlighting how badly they were gaslighting me. Right. And so I thank you for doing that because, when everyone around you, everyone who alleges to be your friends, tells you something you know isn't true, but they keep repeating it to you over and over again, you start asking yourself, like, am I the crazy one? You know? So that I really appreciated that. But you guys have put out a ton of videos about me that have not been friendly or nice, and it's okay. I mean, I can be a good sport about it, and I do think that you guys raised a few valid points.
Yeah, Dequeret, I have heard of what she has done in this or what she said in this interview. I prefer to watch and develop my own opinions because I know firsthand as a streamer that things can be clipped out of context. But I'm not gonna hold my breath having seen the things she's said and done lately. I'm not gonna hold my breath for this to be like some out of context gotchas, you know?
And I just need to be willing to accept where I was wrong and where people are critiquing from good faith. Like, you guys have a little bit of an edgy style, so I'll acknowledge that. But I have thick skin, so it didn't really bother me that much.
That's no, I mean that's commendable. We're on this kind of like internet environment where everyone's very attacky to each other,
Totally,
especially when they're not like engaging with them in person. So
yeah,
you have to have kind of a thick skin. And I know, but I mean, you're talking about earlier, and one of the things that we always commended you on was, when you publicly came out and you said that you were wrong about the Rittenhouse video, which, I mean, most people when they make a mistake, they just try to hide it or they try to shift blame. Jimmy Dore very, famously shifted blame to his producer. And I thought it was really commendable that you came out and you're like, no, I got this wrong, and you were trying to show, not just do this like for your sake, but to say like, listen, audience, you need to understand that this is the story, and I don't want you guys to have the wrong information.
Yeah, there was. Look,
Catalina, thank you for getting a tier 1 sub.
The various things that we're going to talk about in this conversation is that it just became abundantly clear to me that where I was getting my information, and I'm not just talking about like, independent lefty outlets. I'm talking about like legacy media outlets, right? A lot of them, it's not that they report misinformation, it's that they omit details of the story that would, maybe the additional details of the story don't change your mind at all, right? But it's not up to them to decide that. Like, we should know every detail. I think the Amy Cooper story is another example. It was fairly recently I came across Camille Foster's very in-depth investigation into that story, and there were so many details of that story that were intentionally omitted or left out of the legacy media reporting of it, and that painted a picture in my mind and in the minds of many others that there's no justification for the way that she was panicking when she was on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, right? But then you find out, based on what Camille Foster had found out and reported, was that like she didn't have good cell reception. So the person on the other end of that conversation couldn't hear her. She was panicking because she genuinely thought that she was at risk after, here's another thing that was omitted in a lot of the reports, after she was literally threatened by the bird watcher, right? Who said, if you're going to do what you want, I'm going to do what I want, and you're not going to like it. And then he proceeds to try to lure her dog to him. And listen,
Dude, what? That's because you donated them before the pain end was on the table. So, wait. Chat, remember the bird guy? Yeah. Here. The bird guy. This guy.
I'm Christian Cooper, and I am a birder.
Look up.
Wow. Bright blue, flying across the river.
The inspiring world of birds is all around you.
The fun of birding
Do you see the owls right there?
is you never know what you're gonna get.
And this guy is getting you up high and up close.
This is what birding is about.
Extraordinary Birder with Christian Cooper takes flight Saturday, June 17th on Nat Geo Wild.
So, that guy, Christian Cooper, is the guy, I believe, from the story that she's talking about, which is the Central Park Karen.
Would you please stop?
I'm sorry. She's defending this woman right now who encountered a black man who was bird watching. And this is what happened in the video that she's defending this lady.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop.
Please don't come close to me.
Sir, I'm asking you to stop recording me.
Please don't come close to me.
Please take your phone off.
Please don't come close to
And
me.
I'm taking a picture and calling the cops.
Please call the cops.
She's literally
the cops.
choking her
I'm
dog.
going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Please tell them whatever you like.
Excuse me?
By the way, she no longer has custody of that dog because she choked it for like 10 minutes in this video. It does sound like the net. It is the net. It is the National Geographic birder who just got a show on Disney Plus.
I'm sorry, I'm in the Ramble, and there is a man, African American, who has a bicycle helmet. He is recording me and threatening me and my dog.
The dog's legs don't touch the ground in this video.
African American man, I am in Central Park. He is recording me and threatening myself and my dog.
The dog is literally whimpering in pain. On top of that, just as an FYI, guys, at the beginning of last month, she lost her appeal against her employer because she said that her employer fired her and said that she was racist and that it was an unjust firing. And you know what? The court reviewed all of the evidence that she presented and said, "Nah, you were fired justly. Fuck off."
I'm sorry, I can't hear you either. I'm being threatened by a man in the Ramble. Please send the cops immediately. I'm in Central Park in the Ramble.
My man Christian Cooper over here just wants to watch birds. He's got an entire show about it now.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You might still feel that her behavior was uncalled for, whatever. That's up to you. But you should know all those details. And I will say, from my personal opinion, if I'm alone at a park and some random guy tries to lure my dog away from me, I'm gonna freak out. You know, like I just am. And so, okay, with the Rittenhouse story, I was gonna cover the trial, and I just needed to go back and just like really, really look at all of the details and remember all the details. So when I do the story, I get the facts right. And then.
So her, I'm sorry. He asked her to leash her dog. Yeah.
As I'm doing that, I come across a New York Times video. This was a really, really well done video that they posted on YouTube that showed you in slow motion, like how everything transpired that night.
Mm-hmm.
And once you see it for yourself, it's really, really difficult to argue that in those moments he was not acting in self-defense. And this is an area where, you know, Jake and I disagree because, you know, if someone's hitting you over the head with a skateboard, that could kill you, you know? And so, you know, Jake is he's a strong-minded person, and he's not one to back down from a fight. So in his mind, you know, someone confronts you with a skateboard, he doesn't see it as a threat, but I do. And Rittenhouse is not a big burly guy who can like defend himself against someone who's like hitting him over the head with a skateboard as he's lying on his back. So once I saw all those details, first of all, I had to convey them to my audience and be honest about what the reality was. The other thing was, you know, there was a lot of misreporting about how Kyle Rittenhouse was in possession of an illegal weapon and that he crossed state lines with that illegal weapon. Okay, so that was a lie. And it's not a lie that I just made up in my mind, right? That was how it was reported initially, which is why I would mention the state lines, but not because, oh, how dare he cross state lines. Anyone in this country has the right to cross state lines. It was because it was reported that he was in possession of an illegal gun, and he traveled across state lines with an illegal gun, which is a serious charge. But it turned out that he did not travel across state lines with that weapon.
Yeah, he didn't do that. Yeah, the weapon was in the area already. Yeah.
Exactly. He bought it from a friend when he was already in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Sitch, the night of that event, I mean, maybe a day afterwards, Sitch and I were watching those videos online as they were breaking out. And I saw the reporting was basically wrong on CNN the night the viral videos were.
Jim Monkey Maker, like more like a center left leaner like Destiny. Can you give more context to your comment? Like more like a center left leaner like Destiny? Maybe that's what she means, but like I don't know, dude. Chrysafira, you're incoming. Hi, incoming, I'm mom. Da-dun-ch. Die hero, become a villain, something, yeah. Like, does Anna Kasparian now identify in the center right sphere, center left sphere like Destiny? Thought she was more of the progressive end of things. Well, yeah, that's what's so confusing. She's identified as a progressive leftist for like 12 years. I don't know what caused this change other than, honestly, it seems like trans issues has been the major catalyst of this rightward lean. Seems like they're taking a right swing. Yeah, it's just Vegas. I don't know what's going on. I do know that Jenk and Anna are not representative of all the other people who work at TYT, but like they've been missing the mark on trans issues and doubling down on it hard, you know. And yeah, Marty C59. We will get to Benny Carollo's video on how she left TYT. So yeah. Hey, Jessica Metal. Greetings from the Imps. Are we getting an Imp raid too? Hey, Jessica Metal. How you doing? So yeah. To me, this is sad. I have a long-standing love of TYT, and they hold a special place in my heart for helping radicalize me in a leftward direction. But this is bad. Why haven't you transed me yet? I'm waiting for you to finish Fallout New Vegas. Yeah, Diosu. Yeah. Mama Raid, I don't think she's live. Oh, well, maybe just some representation from the Imps. Oh, Hikigo Corgi, thank you for the $1 dono over on YouTube. I appreciate that. Anna says she's okay with an edgy style, but got offended by Vosh calling her out. Yeah, didn't he say, like, one of her takes was, like, R-word? This is already wild.
Release. Don Lemon was saying, you know, a white kid shoots into a crowd of Black Lives Matter protesters. And I'm like, what?
Yep.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So they kind of poison the narrative from the get-go. And then everyone just kind of gets caught up in it.
Yeah, and that's how misinformation spreads. And that was a pivotal moment for me because, again, misinforming the audience is not something I have any interest in. And I might give them the facts and they might not like it, but I can't withhold information from them because I'm afraid that they might not like it. So I'm going to give them the facts. But, you know, I've learned to be better about, first of all, the sources I trust. I make an effort to just be cognizant of the filter bubbles we all exist in, the filter bubbles I exist in. And I've broken through that bubble a little bit to, you know, look at other sources that I typically wouldn't have looked at. And then the other thing that I do now is I just wait. You know, I think the story involving the so-called city bike Karen is a good example of that. The main show, because TYT consists of many different shows, right? The show that I'm the executive producer and host of is the main flagship show, The Young Turks. And prior to that story breaking, I had a meeting with my team and I was like, listen, I don't want you guys pitching stories about random individuals in the country who are caught in an out of context video allegedly behaving badly. I think these stories are divisive. I don't think we usually have the full details before we talk about these stories. And honestly, at the end of the day, engaging in these witch hunts is actually causing more division and hate in the country than anything else. So like, if there's a story that's particularly like jarring and you guys really do want to cover it, that's fine. But just understand that we are going to wait. Like, we are not in the business of breaking news. I don't give a shit about being the first in reporting the story or whatever. I want to make sure that when we do, we actually report it correctly and we don't have egg on our face later. Now, there are a bunch of other shows on the network that I have no say over, that I have no control over, who, you know, inaccurately reported on it and had to issue retractions. They had to take videos down and all that stuff. And I just think that was a teachable moment, hopefully a teachable moment for everyone in the company. But certainly, you know, this is an ongoing conversation I have with my team. And luckily, I don't know how I did it. I feel like I found unicorn producers because they're really smart, super open-minded. You know, they're less interested in this left versus right or partisan garbage. And they're more interested in making sure that if we're going to report stories, we get it accurate. And so we're moving slowly but surely in a direction that I think is better, not just for the show, but I think better in terms of like what we add to society. Like, the last thing I want to do is be the other side of right-wing disinformation, right? Like, if we're going to be critical of disinformation we see happening in various videos and that are produced by other people, we should at least look inward a little bit and make sure that we're doing our due diligence.
Yeah, it's it's interesting you were saying how with the media, a lot of the misinformation comes from like they leak.
See, this is fine, I think. I think it's fine to have a desire to do your due diligence when it comes to like media. I think it's fine to have like and good even. Yeah, I'll go a step further. It is good to check your facts when you're a reporting organization. I think though that saying, oh, we aren't going to report on anything until it's settled, and then simultaneously be like, well, you know, Jesse Signal brings up some good points. I think there's a conflict here, because you have to weigh in at some point about the news, right? So at what point are you going to weigh in? You know, there are some people who say that, you know, the Earth being round isn't settled science. Does that mean you don't report on the Earth being round? Of course not. So there's like some different weights being assigned here, and I think it's pretty obvious that that's the case.
Leave stuff out. And that's been my experience too. Just this intentional leaving out of key information, or they'll like the headline or the subsection will kind of frame something.
And yeah, I do think now that I'm watching this that I remember these hosts being pretty conservative
in a very specific way. So even when you get to like kind of the contradictory information, your mind is already like made up by that point, so it doesn't matter. And so it leads to this kind of effect where like once a person once that story hits that, like you or me or anyone, because I kind of went through the same experience, where like once something hits me in a specific way, like it's like I'm free of the matrix. Suddenly I'm starting to see like things a little bit differently. All the dominoes kind of start to fall, and I say, oh wait, I start to see like where all the misinformation is coming from. Was the Rittenhouse thing like, was that like the key moment, or was there something else that kind of like made you shift your thinking?
So that was one of the pivotal moments, but honestly, I would say everything for me started when I started getting gaslit on the crime wave. And it's really interesting to talk about these various political issues in the abstract, but then
oh dear, the crime wave. Here, this is about 7 minutes long. From
Talk with voters
NPR.
This fall, and it won't take long for someone to mention crime. It is a problem that people feel.
This is from November 3rd, 2022, about the crime wave.
Republicans and their media have played up the threat of crime during this election season, but what do the numbers really show? NPR's Sandhya Dirks reports.
Is crime really rising? Turns out that question is incredibly complicated. So's the answer. Take the FBI crime statistics for 2021. At first glance, up on homicides, down on property crimes, similar to 2020. But because of a long-planned change in reporting standards, most cities didn't report their 2021 crime numbers to the FBI, says Fordham law professor John Pfaff.
It's turned our crime data into just sort of a giant black hole.
The stories we tell about crime are filled with holes, rife with misinformation, Pfaff says, even when we have more complete data.
The other, I think, big mistake we make with crime narratives is the effort to tell a narrative. Right? Crime is deeply local.
While it sometimes feels like crime is rising everywhere, that's just not how it works. And it's important to take the long view. Property crime is near historic lows. There was a significant spike in homicides in 2020, but it's still nothing like back in the 90s. There's another really important question. What do we even mean by crime?
We generally talk about crime is up or crime is down. It's referring to sort of this small core set of what the FBI calls Index 1 crimes.
That's murder, robbery, rape, aggravated assault, larceny, burglary, and auto theft.
Sometimes arson, sometimes not.
Pfaff says, look, many of these are serious, significant crimes. But that list was chosen by a group of police chiefs almost 100 years ago, and it hasn't changed since.
I don't think crime data actually tells you all that much.
That's University of Chicago sociologist Robert Vargas. He says the way crime is defined is biased from the start.
I mean, it tells you how police behave as an organization.
Someone shoplifting tampons or diapers from a pharmacy counts as a crime, but a corporation stealing millions of their workers' wages doesn't. Tax evasion doesn't. Big companies committing environmental crimes? Nope, because those aren't investigated by traditional police. In our system, perpetrators of what we call crime are more likely to be poor people, not because poor people commit more crimes or hurt more people. They don't, but because that's how crime is defined.
I'm playing The Last Spell, if anyone's curious about it. It's quite good. I would recommend.
It's not just which crimes count. And
if Anna Kasparian wants to turn right-wing, let her. TYD has already lost credibility. Oyemi Olurin already toasted Jen and Anna in a debate. Yeah, I haven't seen that debate. But, yeah. No, this is not great.
Count and which don't, Vargas says. It's also who police target.
They're going after people selling drugs, people committing traffic violations, oftentimes in poor neighborhoods, poor Black and brown neighborhoods, and not other neighborhoods.
Black and brown people are policed and arrested at much higher levels than white people, says Rena Karifa Johnson with the advocacy group Forward US.
If you are a young Black kid who goes to school in a big city where there are police at your school, if you get in a physical fight with another student, that is often seen as a crime.
But if you're a white kid at a more affluent or private school where there aren't police and you get into a fight,
it's not something that we see thought about as a crime.
So when we turn on the nightly news, we're hearing a very slanted story about crime, says Alec Karakatanis, a civil rights lawyer and activist.
When people talk about a crime wave, they're basing that on very distorted set of data that the police themselves are manipulating and curating for their own political reasons.
Take Wisconsin, where the Fraternal Order of Police, among other law enforcement agencies, have endorsed Republican Senator Ron Johnson for re-election. Johnson is running as tough on crime, but he's also called the criminal January 6th attack on the Capitol a peaceful protest by people who love this country. He has said he would have been concerned had they been Black Lives Matter protesters instead. Republicans are pushing the narrative of a crime wave in ads like this one, falsely attacking Johnson's opponent, Mandela Barnes.
Even with shootings, robberies, carjackings, violent attacks on our police, more than 300 murders last year alone. Yet Barnes has even supported defunding the police.
Barnes is Black, like all of the alleged criminals depicted in the ad.
There's huge amounts of money and private interests behind these ads.
That's Insha Rahman with the Vera Institute.
And they have real impact on what happens in our elections.
Rahman says people confuse crime with not feeling safe. Worry about crime is often a code for white racial anxiety. Rahman says Republicans continue to be seen by many voters as better on crime, even when people know their tough on crime solutions have repeatedly proven unsuccessful.
But when it's the only option on offer, it's what people go to because in the absence of a proactive, affirmative vision for safety, you pick the thing that you know, even if you know it doesn't really work.
Democrats, she says, have failed to give any alternative for what safety could look like. Take the defund the police accusation, like the one against Mandela Barnes. Most Democrats respond by saying,
No, I want to fund the police more. I support the police. At least from the polling, that's not a very effective tactic. But that's the only response that we are seeing to those attacks.
This messaging around crime, it scares people, but it doesn't really offer solutions, says Rena Karifa Johnson, because it isn't meant for the people most impacted by the crime that is rising, homicide.
The communities that are most uniquely harmed by gun violence are also the communities that are most uniquely harmed by long sentences, by pretrial detention, by draconian approaches to criminal justice reform.
She says these crime wave narratives are part of a historical pattern.
When did you interview Anna? I interviewed Anna, I would say like a year ago, maybe a little bit over. Have you thought about playing Frostpunk? I love Frostpunk Nexus of Midnight. I played it a lot on stream early on in my streaming career. I kind of saw that coming when they started saying some things, the right dude deserves a compliment. There's always an agenda behind it. I don't know that there is a coherent... I don't know that there is as much of a coherent agenda behind what TYT is doing as one might think. I tend to think that is not actually the case. I don't think she's doing this for money. I think it's coming from a more genuine place than that. But that's just my 2 cents, you know.
After racial and social justice protests comes a backlash.
The right. Gotcha.
Here's civil rights lawyer Alec Karakatanis.
It's very important for powerful people, especially in moments of uprising and moments of social unrest, to attempt to create a moral panic around crime.
Moral panics are a way of pushing back against change or reform, a way of preserving the status quo. But this time, it isn't about keeping things the way they've been, Karakatanis says, because while the Republican Party is running on a moral panic about crime, they're also openly anti-democratic.
The reactionary backlash against the protests of 2020 is coming at a time when this country is hurtling fast toward fascist and authoritarian life.
And in response, both Republicans and Democrats are calling for more police. So Karakatanis says the question isn't, is crime really rising? Instead, we should be asking, what really makes us safe? I'm Sandhya Dirks, NPR News.
And now.
So, yeah, that's the crime wave that she's talking about. It's a bunch of manipulated statistics from conservatives that reflect, like, very real increased economic deprivation as a result of ending pandemic relief efforts, but it's not the huge wave that is being fear-mongered about by conservatives.
And once you personally experience something, and once you see something happening in the country with your own 2 eyes, and your political side is incessantly gaslighting you on it, it makes you question, well, what else are you guys lying about? Or what else are you guys gaslighting about? And that's what happened. So, you know, during the pandemic, there was absolutely a crime wave in the country, mostly in like major cities. Los Angeles happened to be one of them. And, you know, I talked about how I, was assaulted. Well, actually, let me give you the details again, because there's an element to that story that I've never shared with anyone that also explains where my head's at now. So, you know, as I was walking my dog one day, there were these 2 guys. They appeared to be homeless. They appeared to be on something. They looked like they might be messed out or something because they were kind of acting erratically. But, you know, typically when I come across guys like that, if I ignore them, they won't do anything.
Right.
That wasn't the case this time around. You know, they're coming toward me, and my dog Charlie, like, he does his business, and as I bend over to pick up his business, one of them grabs me by my hips and just, like, with an erection and everything, just starts like humping me, like, right there in like broad daylight. And it was terrifying because, like, I didn't have any weapon with me, no taser, no pepper spray, nothing. And luckily the guy, he did that, and then he and his friend walk away while they're like laughing at me. And I felt so degraded, scared. And like the first thing I did is I called my husband, and he came down and he's like, where are they? And he started looking for them. We couldn't find them. The cops were—
I mean, guys, she's not making that up. I fully believe that actually happened. You know, like, I don't want to see anybody in my chat being like, she's making that up for clout, or oh yeah, that didn't happen. Like, guys, no, I believe that happened. I think that anyone who's saying that it didn't, and that she's making up a sexual assault story for clout, I think that that's kind of a disgusting conclusion to come to. I know that you guys all aren't a fan of Anna, but I hope that you'll extend at least basic courtesy and basic, like, compassion.
Wouldn't come. Like, we actually had an incident in front of our building like a few weeks prior to that was really scary. We called the police, and the police just wouldn't come. Like, it was amazing. And now in retrospect, I realized the reason why is because there was a shortage, and I think that there was like an unofficial strike considering what happened in 2020 and all the protests. So they just wouldn't show up, and I just didn't even think to call the cops because I'm like, what's the point? These guys have already like left, and they're not going to be able to find them. But anyway, I opened up about that, and I also started opening up about, you know, just what the statistics were indicating in regard to crime and how it's obviously having a negative impact on all communities, but mostly the communities that like BLM and leftists claim to care so much about, the disadvantaged communities. You know, crime on the metro system in LA has been unbelievable. And the majority of people who take the metro, who take buses and public transportation, they're usually like immigrant workers. They're usually, you know, blue collar workers who, you know, don't have enough money to buy a car, for instance. And so I was like, why are you guys cool with just having these people deal with this kind of violence? There was like a phase last year where people were literally being set on fire randomly on buses. And that would get no attention, no news coverage, and it would infuriate me. And so when I opened up about what happened to me in my own neighborhood, what I thought was telling was how not everyone, but some people accuse me of pushing racist.
I don't think she's thinking that it's an own, that she called, like, she called the cops that they didn't show up. I don't think she thinks that's an own, guys.
Stereotypes. But I have never, ever disclosed the race of these two individuals, ever.
Yeah.
But they just assumed that these two guys were black. They weren't
Wow.
black. They were two white guys. But like, I never shared that publicly because I didn't think the race really mattered, right? What actually happened mattered. And I thought the reaction to it by the people who were supposed to
Unbiased TYT mod, by the way. Oh wait, it's just Vegas. Do you mod for TYT? Interesting.
allegedly want dignity for everyone.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, Jessica Metal. I believe her fully about her story. I just don't think that, like, changing your politics as a result of that is necessarily the way to go. But, you know, I also haven't been sexually assaulted in public, so, you know.
To it. Like, that really bothered me.
Well,
so that was the beginning of it.
It's just Vegas. You're in good company. We have a lot of unbiased TYT mods in chat.
I'd say that's what started me questioning everything and wanting to, like, look deeper into everything. And then other things happened. So the misrepresentation of what was happening to Asian Americans. So there would be all these videos of Asian Americans getting sucker punched or hit over the head with, you know, whatever. And the main narrative on the left was, this is anti-Asian hate.
Yeah.
But actually, if you look at all of those stories.
I just thought of a legal way to steal from the supermarket. You eat the food in the store and wait till you poop it out. That way you leave the store with nothing of theirs.
Individually, it usually involved like a repeat criminal or someone who's just been left on the streets with severe mental health issues. Like, people basically carrying out these acts of violence because they don't have their head in the right place, they need help, whatever it is. But, like, to just brush it off as, oh, it's just anti-Asian hate that's been inspired by the right wing, it just wasn't true.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just thought it was wrong to frame it that way, when in reality there was a real issue with, you know, repeat offenders, and in some cases people with severe mental health issues, honestly randomly targeting all sorts of people. But, you know, since a lot of this was happening in areas like San Francisco, where there's a sizable Asian population, the narrative on the left became, oh, it's just anti-Asian hate that's been inspired by the right. And
I mean, it can be both things, right? Like, it can be both like homeless people needing mental health help, lashing out at people who are, you know, geographically close to them, but it can also be anti-Asian hate and anti-Asian bigotry that makes them more prone to attack Asian people, right? Like, there were plenty of stories of people attacking Asian folks while screaming something about, like, the Wuhan flu or something like that, you know? Like, I know this is gonna get me clapped by DMCA, but, like, y'all, this was an actual scene from Borat 2 at an actual conservative rally. And yeah, I'll tempt fate here. We're gonna go. There we go.
Corona is a liberal hoax. Obama, what we gotta do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Let's hear it. Dr. Fauci, what we gonna do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu.
Is this real? Yes. If none of you are familiar with the hit Borat film series, it features a man in makeup going around pretending to be a foreigner in the United States, and they film him in compromising situations with actual human beings, and yeah, nah, it's
She's over there. She's
no, okay, wait.
He's been doing it really. WHO, what we gonna do? Chop him up like the Saudis did.
Anyway, yeah, no, like, this is around the time that she's talking about, and, like, people were running around like hating, like calling like the coronavirus like a Chinese bioweapon, and Fox News was stoking anti-Asian bigotry. That was absolutely a thing that was happening. I think it can be both things at the same time.
And I just didn't really see much evidence of that. Then there was the attacks on straight news journalists who were doing their jobs. For instance, when Li Fang was reporting on the BLM protests, when he was accurately reporting on the BLM protests and some of the violence that took place during those protests, his own colleagues at The Intercept tried to paint him as a racist. I've known Li Fang for many, many years, since I started working at TYT. Guy doesn't have a racist bone in his body. For them to paint him in that way, I thought was disgusting, and it had a chilling effect, right? The whole point is to intimidate journalists from doing accurate reporting on what's actually occurring on the ground. Then there was what happened to Jesse Singal.
I'm not familiar with Li Fang. I have been assured by some people that he is indeed a racist, but I don't know enough about it, so I'm gonna chalk that one up to a huh? But when it comes to Jesse Singal, I do know a little bit about Jesse Singal,
which I found disgusting. I didn't know about that until at some point this year. I would say earlier this year.
With the trans stuff? Jesse's been on the show before. Yeah, he's done great.
Jesse Singal is a good faith, I think, critical thinker. I'm subscribed to Blocked and Reported. I have listened to endless podcast episodes from Blocked and Reported. I haven't seen anything from Jesse Singal that communicates to me that he is a transphobe, that he is a bad person. He did straight news reporting on basically what, some of the risks could be when it comes to transitioning literal kids.
Jesse Singal is not a good faith actor. Again, for those of you who missed the beginning of the show, Jesse Singal is in fact a guy. Did I closed out the tabs? Damn it. GLAAD. You know the organization GLAAD? GLAAD actually lists him as a purveyor of fine anti-LGBTQ bigotry and misinformation designed deliberately to harm trans people. We're talking about GLAAD, okay? Not only are we talking about GLAAD, but like Jesse Singal has been one of the biggest purveyors of the rapid onset gender dysphoria study made by Lisa Littman. That is actual dog shit. If you look at the paper, it's published, it's written in dog shit. Now I exaggerate to make a point, but if you look into it, Brown University had to retract that study several times and distance itself from Lisa Littman because of how horrible that paper was. For those of you unfamiliar with it, the TLDR is that the Lisa Littman study on rapid onset gender dysphoria is what almost single-handedly pushed the idea of social contagion into the conservative sphere, and Jesse Singal is very, very much responsible for that. Additionally, the study is not actually about transgender youth. It's actually about the perceptions of parents of transgender youth. And on top of that, it's not even just about the parents of transgender youth. It's specifically about parents of transgender youth pulled from transphobic websites where they were researching how to detransition their kids. It's even worse than Facebook mobs, Koopa Shell. It's literally people who were too transphobic to be contained by Facebook, and instead they had to go to transphobic websites and forums to talk with other transphobes. It's one of the worst studies I've ever seen, and Jesse Singal was instrumental in mainstreaming it. And as far as I'm concerned, I will always hold that against him. And on top of that, he has continued to push similar theories about trans people, and frankly, the fact that Anna is defending him here is deeply, deeply disappointing on so many people. Yeah, exactly, Jessica Metal. It was the equivalent of going to like a neo-Nazi website to get information about Jewish people.
With puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones. And through his reporting, which I'm very sad to say I didn't really come across until this year, I learned that I was wrong.
God, that explains so fucking much. Anna, you've been injecting brain poison. You've been injecting brain poison for the last year. Jesse Single is not a good faith actor. And you've been injecting brain poison for the last year. This explains so fucking much.
Wrong about a bunch of other things, right? So for instance, it is a lie that puberty blockers are reversible. In some cases, they are not, and they can cause irreparable harm. And look, you might think, okay, but you got to do a balancing act. And if a child or if a teenager had severe gender dysphoria and it would actually be better for that person to go on puberty blockers, okay, I mean, we should be able to balance that out. But
well, yes, puberty blockers are not reversible insofar as you are not able yet to time travel back.
I fix.
But yeah, puberty blockers are not reversible insofar as you are not able as of yet to take a time machine back in time and then go through puberty that you would have had, the puberty you would have had at like 12, you know? So I guess in that sense, they're not reversible, but in another sense, they are reversible insofar as you can still have a healthy and happy puberty and full development, despite the fact that you cannot, in fact, travel through time as of yet. Other than forward, obviously.
My point here is withholding the...
Still haven't invented time travel. It's true. Risk inverse. I know. I'm working on it. So far, it's just the chair. It's just the chair behind me. I'm sorry. That's as far as I've got. It's a comfy chair, though. When we travel back in time, it will be cozy as hell.
Information because you don't like the information getting out there ain't the way to go, because that destroys any opportunity for us to actually have a good faith debate about what we should do moving forward. What are the pros and cons? So there's that, you know, all of this stuff just, it started adding up. And through listening to Blocked and Reported, I found out I got a lot of stories wrong as well. Rebecca Jones ended up being a liar and a grifter. And I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have known that had I not, you know, opened my mind up to other voices.
Rebecca Jones was the one that went after DeSantis, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And she's a complete liar. And we uplifted her, we enabled her, and I feel disgusting that we did that. So I issued a retraction and a correction on that story. I don't know what the reaction was.
My reaction was good.
Yeah.
What is some of the reaction like? One of the problems that we often have, you know, obviously we're labeled right wingers all the time. Anyone who watches our show knows we're pretty much like disaffected liberals. Like to call us right wing is just, I mean, it's kind of laughable. But we are constantly called right wingers just because we don't straw man the arguments that are made on the right. And so many people on the left, you know, all they are familiar with is the straw man version of the trans issue or some particular news story. So what is some of the reaction that you have gotten to that?
The trans issue.
Well, I mean, the reaction has not been great. I mean, look, that leftist mafia stream was unbelievable to me. Like the accusations that were thrown out there, Olay implying that I'm racist because as a woman, I don't want to be called a birthing person. Like race didn't come up at all until she brought it up. And then she was the only one on that stream who brought race into it and like made it abundantly clear that she's got an issue with white women and just thinks they're all the same and like, you know, whatever. and then after I basically called her out on it, she's like, oh, you're attacking me and only me because I'm black. And it's like, no, you're the only one in that group of people who attack me and accuse me of being racist because I personally want to be called a woman. So, I mean,
I'm not sure that they fully understand the damage that accusation can do. And if they do, that makes it even more.
They understand.
Okay.
They understand.
I mean, that makes it even.
I mean, chat, I have been called racist again for saying that I think biracial people deserve to exist. And you know what? I stand by that. I do think biracial people deserve to exist and should be treated with love and respect. I do believe that. I'll stand by that until the day I die. Now, that being said, there are people on the left who will attack people unfairly for things that they have said or done, right? I don't know how... I don't think that this is one of those cases, frankly. I think that... I don't know exactly I don't remember the exact circumstances that she's talking about when it comes to like leftist mafia racism allegations or whatever, but I do know that I very deeply disagree with her takes on trans issues at the moment. Yeah. So yeah, look, my best advice when the internet's going crazy, go like, I don't know, like turn off your phone, move over to Blue Sky, give your dog treats. There are lots of things you can do, you know?
Even more.
They never said Anna was racist? Well, then I don't know what she's talking about. Also, just real quick, I think we're at 21 subs now.
Horrible. I think she published a video of you that was you saying the N-word. It was back when, you know, YouTube didn't have this big prohibition on saying the N-word, and you weren't, it's not like you were calling people the N-word. You were using it, quoting stories. So all of these are taken out of context, which is completely unfair.
Yeah, I mean, look, so it's really funny because that compilation video wasn't made by her. If you guys remember, at some point last year, everyone was going after Rogan for saying the N-word. And so someone on the left had made a compilation video of all the times he had said the N-word on his podcast. And then in response to that, someone on the right made a compilation of all the times like I had said the N-word, right? Or me and Cenk had said the So someone on the right made that video. And we had a company meeting, the producers, everyone, we got together, and this is like years and years ago. The last time we actually uttered that.
Also, hey, Natalie Marie, sincerely, fuck off. Thanks. Bye.
On here was in 2012. But we sat down, we talked about whether we should
How's Blue Sky?
say the word when we're quoting
doesn't
someone
have
that
shit
we are
heels on it,
condemning
so
as
pretty good.
racist, or should we sanitize it and say N-word instead? And so we had a vote, and we decided at the time that it was better to actually read the quotes verbatim as opposed to sanitizing it. And I knew it would eventually come back to bite me in the ass, and it did. And I'm not going to apologize for it because context matters, intention matters, and what people like Olay are trying to do is erase all of that, right? To make it seem as though intention is totally irrelevant, context is totally irrelevant. If she says someone's racist, then by definition that person is racist. End of story. Period. And I just disagree. I also disagree with racism of all sorts, right? So I find it disgusting when people make generalizations about Black people or migrants or any group. Why would I somehow be okay making generalizations about white women or white people, right? So I find it gross and divisive. And look, at the center of all of this is I've been doing this shit.
Yep, she did it anyways. Yeah.
For like 17 years, and things have gotten worse. And I just don't think whatever strategy the left thinks they're engaging in is.
Oh, just for context, it's just Vegas. Natalie Marie has been calling me racist and like sniping clips of my channel for like the last 2 months because, again, I didn't think it was okay to call a Black content creator a C-slur. And I also, Black content creator and friend of mine, by the way, a racial slur. And I also don't think it's okay to say that, like, biracial people don't deserve to exist. I don't think that's okay. And also because I said that the Hogwarts Legacy boycott was not effective. Or would not and was not effective, and I was fine if people decided to play it. That was fundamentally it. It's not. I said Hogwarts Legacy isn't the game that I particularly care for. I'm not going to play it. If other people are, I'm not going to like judge their entire character based on that decision. So yeah, that's the whole context for you. If you want to go look at the clips where I'm racist allegedly, you're free to do so. It's me, Natalie Marie, on Twitter. You'll find your treasure trove of clips. There you go.
An effective strategy. I think it's actually caused more harm than good. I think their rhetoric and their discourse is a lot of times ignorant of the facts. And I think that they go around accusing people of doing things that they themselves engage in.
It's true. I do have haters.
I'm part of that too. I'm trying to do better moving forward. But a lot of people are going to look at this and think, oh, well, then that means she's a right winger. Whatever. You can call me whatever you want. I don't care what you label me as. But
just not birthing person.
Don't call me a person with a uterus. Yeah, exactly.
I don't blame you at all. So
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what my labels are at this point.
There's a certain community of people that really only likes me if I'm hating the same people they hate on. But I like to think I'm a little bit better at giving reasons as to why I dislike somebody. How are you on Twitter still? I don't know. It's a hell site that I can use to amplify my platform, so I use it.
Right.
Because I don't fit in anywhere, I feel like.
Well, Catball Arena, you're very welcome.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think's causing sort of this shift in the left and in media? Or
I'm all right. It's just Vegas. I'm all right. I have things I need to work on, just like any other human being does. I have blind spots, and I attempt to address them, but I'm also not going to kowtow to people who call me racist for, like, rightfully saying you shouldn't call black people racial slurs. And I'm also not going to kowtow to those same people who are saying biracial people don't deserve to exist because we need to preserve bloodlines for marginalized people. I'm not about discriminating against biracial people. Sorry.
I mean, first of all, I'm assuming you think there is a shift that's happening in the left and the media.
Well, it's funny because, you know, a lot of them LARP is like anti-capitalist, like revolutionaries or whatever.
LARP, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it's true. And so it's really funny because what they do is they are positioning themselves to attract a very specific niche in audiences, right? So they're going for the purists, the people who like to think of themselves as like far left, communist, socialist, whatever. But like the whole thing is, I mean, you can see it in the various streams. Like they'll talk about things through the lens of we're the most pure, like we're the most sincere in what we're saying.
Now, what she is talking about is a problem on the left. I don't know to what degree it's accurate about leftist mafia. I know many of the people on there, and they're good eggs. They're good noodles. They're trying their best. I don't know that they are intentionally trying to have that framing. Maybe they unintentionally stumble into it. But there is a tendency among some leftist circles to do this weird purity testing. And if you are not living up to those standards, it's time to excommunicate. Again, I don't think Anna's the victim of this per se. I think that she's doubling down on being rightfully called out about spreading this anti-trans rhetoric that she's getting from Jesse Single, you know?
Saying whatever.
The real
and
left,
like,
yeah.
Exactly, we're the real left. So when they do that, what ends up happening is they become more and more extreme in what they are saying, right? In what they claim to believe. And at the heart of that, like what they're actually doing is trying to attract a niche audience for what? To make money. Like I think there's a financial motive behind it. You know, they're competing with one another for you know, a particular niche, a particular ideology that's reflected in these audiences. And I think I'm probably self-sabotaging right now, career-wise. But I don't know.
I mean, that's true. You definitely are doing that.
The problem is once you see certain things, you can't unsee them.
Right.
And I can't just lie. I can't do it with a straight face. It's just not who I am.
What do you mean? Are you talking self-sabotaging by talking to us or talking about these things in general? Because I like it's an interesting dynamic that we have here on the internet, because I do agree with you. We've talked about this on the show many, many times. Like the incendiary voices in the political space are the ones that get attention, blow their channels up, get views, you know, become rich, basically.
Yeah,
Conflict entrepreneurs is what I always call them. And we're in a kind of a, you know, we are in the same kind of position that you've kind of come to. Like we want to give an honest, a fair assessment of both sides of the argument and try to kind of come to some sort of truth. And one of the paths that I think we've kind of fell into is just, I think us, Sitch and I, arguing points makes it interesting enough that we can kind of build an audience. And watching the videos of you last week, it kind of feels like that's kind of the direction
Marty
you're going. It seems like
C59.
Jank is saying over the top things, and you're reeling him in, which is I got to tell you, when I'm watching your show, I'm going, oh look, Anna is just like Sitch. She won't let Jank have any fun.
Are you saying you're the one saying over the top things?
Look,
again, I don't think Anna's doing this for the money. Third Archon, I think it's coming from a weirder place than that. Money would be more understandable.
Constantly. And Sitch is like no, Adam, you know that we don't know that yet. So, but I think our audience understands that there's a little bit of a dynamic going there. That's fun, but at the same time, they are getting the information. So, unfortunately for my reputation, it's like, don't listen to Adam. You know, he's always.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, again, credit to Jank because
yeah, exactly.
He's not like one of these like people who get super offended if you correct him right there on the spot. It's just I kind of went along with some of the more hyperbolic commentary, mostly because I was reading the same sources and I had the same. You know, I think he's doing better and better. Like we have a lot of conversations about a lot of these issues privately, and I'll just be like, look.
So Sitch does the same thing to me.
Yeah. And I'll just be like, look. I mean, before he was gonna go, he asked me if I thought it was a good idea that he was gonna go debate Destiny, and I said no. And it's mostly because I see a lot of clickbaity stuff going on in that realm too, like with some of the debate stuff that takes place. But also I asked him, like, what are you guys going to debate? So first he said, oh, we're going to talk about like the Democratic Party and our disagreements about it. I was fine with that. But then he mentioned, he's like, and then we're going to talk about Rittenhouse.
So he knew Rittenhouse was going to come up.
I mean, like, yeah, that's the thing, Billy Zane fan. If kind of the catalyzing event is like being sexually assaulted by strangers on the street, like, I understand how that could affect someone's behavior and belief systems going forward. I can understand that. I don't think that means it's a good argument for, you know, adopting bad positions. But I can understand it, you know?
Yeah, I think they agreed on the topics ahead of time.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And you know, we had it. Look, Jake is his own man. The best I can do is share my perspective. And I just told him, I was like, but he was acting in self-defense. But look, Jank just has a different perspective. It is what it is. Like, I'm not here to talk shit about Jank. You know, like we and again, I want to give him credit because we can have the conversation on air, this exact conversation, and he's gonna say the exact same thing. I'm gonna say my piece, and it's not gonna lead to like an uncomfortable relationship with him. It's not gonna lead to retaliation. And I really commend him for having an open mind. But to him, he just disagrees about it being self-defense. He thinks like he didn't need to like shoot the gun, he didn't need to kill people. I hear you. I wish it didn't end that way. But if I were in his shoes, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I probably would have prayed and sprayed. So I mean, Rittenhouse did the right thing. Like, it's a good thing he was in control of the weapon instead of me. So
yeah,
it's funny that like this gets thrown around a lot. Like, people accuse you of grifting or other people of grifting when they start changing their beliefs, even though it's like you're changing your beliefs in a way that would like be more likely to hurt your career as opposed to help it.
I know.
Yeah, it's like insane because you know what so many people on the internet want is they just want you to choose one side.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing, right? Like, I don't think trauma responses are necessarily like a good way to dictate policy, right? You know?
Very comfortably and to like fit into it and to just say like these are the hyperbolic talking points. And then if you're like, well, let's add some nuance here, which pisses off your audience more often than not, you're like, well, you're a grifter. Like, well, who am I grifting to exactly?
So I'm going to stick up for my audience a little bit because to their credit, I think the majority of people in the audience are open-minded and are open to new information. I think that there is a small but very loud minority in our audience and on the left in general that really give the left a bad name. I think they're overrepresented on Twitter and they're children. They act like children. I think some of them literally are like minors, and they see every.
Sure, but like, then don't pay as much attention to it, you know? And I know that's easy to say, like, but like, yeah, get more offline.
Everything. And look, if they're young, I don't blame them. I think when you are young, it's a little more difficult to grasp nuance and how complicated and complex a lot of these issues are. You know, one of the things that Jesse Singles says all the time that I love, and he says it repeatedly, is it's complicated, because it is. Like, all of these issues are way more complicated than the way they're being portrayed in partisan media. And so what I want to do is actually understand those complexities. But here's the other thing: understand the other side in good faith, okay? Because I think that there are some stereotypes that the left has kind of bought into about what the arguments are on the other side. And, you know, it doesn't make us sharper to misrepresent what the other side is actually saying. It actually makes us weaker. If you understand what their arguments are, it'll then allow you to reflect on what your own weaknesses might be in regard to the arguments that you're making. And so, and then one other thing, and this was an unexpected outcome that I was talking to my husband about just last night. I've been a lot happier lately, like a lot happier. And I think it's because once you actually, and look, I want to make the distinction and like draw out a caveat. I'm not talking about like far right, like militia members. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about just mainstream conservatives, Republicans. Once you actually understand what their arguments are or where they're coming from, it's a lot more difficult to be hyperbolic about things, right? Yeah. And so you kind of start seeing the world around you for what it really is. And there's a certain amount of fear that kind of starts to.
Dude, what? Man, this is just an absolute downfall. It makes me genuinely feel bad, you know?
To dissipate a certain amount of like hyperbolic thinking that starts to go away, and you start to see things a lot more clearly, and the world isn't as messed up as people would have you believe. And that's a good thing. Now, some people might get super offended at me saying that because they've completely bought into the hyperbolic thinking and they think the world's coming to an end. And there are terrible things happening. I don't want to minimize that, but we need to be realistic about what's actually transpiring in the country. And for areas where we need improvement or different policy solutions, we should actually have good faith debates about it and come up with those solutions. And I think that the current discourse is standing in the way of that.
That's really fast. I never thought about that, but it makes perfect sense if people go into politics and they have this very like the other side is either composed of like all racists who want to enable some kind of fascistic regime against me, or like the other side is all made of like communists who want to take over the country. Like, it's gonna put you in this headspace. You're like, oh my god, like I'm in this fight for my life. Like, this is like the most important thing ever. And then you're like, well, once you start to see like, well, yeah, there's small pockets of that exist, but the average person is not that. You're like, oh my god, this weight has been lifted from my shoulder. I don't feel like the world is about to end.
Yeah, totally.
I want to say two things. First of all, and I don't know your take on Jordan Peterson, but it is like the first rule is tell the truth, and I feel like coming to a place in your life where you're like, I feel like I'm honestly telling the truth now, I can see where that would make me feel completely better. I'm one of these people who just hates thinking I'm being dishonest, or if I'm in a position where I'm forced to be dishonest for a job or something like that. I just, it's horrifying for me. So, and I do think it is kind of politically expedient for a lot of people to categorize far right, racist, Nazi pieces of shit who, none of us are in favor of, for moderate Republicans who just want some, they have a different spin on some sort of policy prescription, which my thinking of the world is, you've got the conservatives on the right who are kind of playing defense for society, and you have liberals and progressives on the right who are or on the left who are kind of playing offense for society. They're the ones that are pitching all of these crazy policies for making society better, and conservatives are kind of saying, well, we're kind of good where we are now. Should we take the risk of doing this? And you really need, what sports team that doesn't have a good offense and a good defense is going to be a winning team? So a lot of the political polarization I see as part of the problem here. And one of the nice things about you is starting to realize, there are people on the right that aren't just crazy, insane racists, and maybe you can communicate their arguments clearly to your audience, which is a great position to be in. We might be able to deal with some of the political polarization.
Yeah, I think there are, look, I disagree with many of the policy ideas they have or the perspectives they espouse, but there are good faith, thoughtful, conservative Republicans out there. Like, I think Glenn Loury is a good example. Again, I might not agree with everything he has to say, but he's a thoughtful person, and he is not in any way justifying, white supremacy or some of the hyperbolic things that he might get accused of by those on the left. And again, it's really about understanding in good faith the other side and being able to, I guess, debate the issues, as opposed to, like, what I see happening right now is, I want the left to engage in the argument, as opposed to what I see happening, which is them engaging in like ad hominem in a lot of cases, character assassination, or statements about the individual's character based on their preconceived notions and based on what they heard other streamers say about the individual. It's like, okay, just take a step back for a second. You need to.
Forgot Anna Kasparian lost some major points when she said that Madeleine Albright was her hero. Madeleine Albright said that the death of 500,000 Iraqi children was acceptable when the West was sanctioning Iraq. Yeah, not a great look.
Address the point that this person is making. And if you're not addressing the point that this person is making, and instead you're turning around and throwing all sorts of accusations at them to make them seem like they're immoral or they're bad people, then that tells me that you don't really have an answer to what they're saying, And I see that happening more when it comes to culture war related issues as opposed to economic issues. And that's the other thing. I think that the left has completely, and they'll deny this, but just go to Twitter right now. They've abandoned economic policies and instead hyper focus on incredibly divisive, identity related issues, right?
Yeah.
And
right.
Yeah, how dare the left care about civil rights for trans people? Yeah, totally.
And their take is always, oh well, the other side wants us they're racist, that's why. They're transphobic, that's why. And it's like, no, you got to do more than that. So if you're gonna if you're gonna refute what they're saying, then actually address the points they're making. And if you're not going to do that, you're going to come out looking incredibly weak and childish.
You probably don't know this, but we talk about MMT and UBI on the stream quite often. It drives people crazy. How do you make affordable housing sexy? It's not necessarily a thing.
Well, it's surprising because I did a story just last Wednesday on Airbnb crashing.
I watched that vid, yeah.
Yeah, and that video, I'm kind of shocked. It got 200,000 views. It was not something I expected. I thought it's a dense, statistics-driven, video, but it did well. And I think that there is a hunger for those types of videos and for that type of content. It's not going to go super viral like some hyperbolic, video about a police shooting or about an alleged Karen, right? But I don't really care. I just look. I don't want to be part of the problem. I don't want to add to this toxic discourse that does nothing to improve anyone's life. And I feel like I've been engaging in that, and I feel embarrassed about it. And that's really where I'm coming from. I want to get people healthcare. I want to get people housing. Those are the issues that matter. Okay.
Well, in order to do that, you kind of
based, but also you can care about trans people. For fuck's sake.
Have to work with Republicans, and that's where I think this stereotype of Republicans as evil racists is ultimately not helpful in the end.
Exactly, Real Radham. The reason the trans issue is so contentious right now is because of a coordinated media attack on trans people designed to rally conservatives around the idea of exterminating trans people. Just straight up eliminating trans people from modern society. I'm so sorry we're engaging in this. God damn it. Archangel, thank you for gifting a sub to Real Radham. Appreciate it.
If you want healthcare, you can't work with the evil racist to get healthcare done. You just can't do it.
Well, I mean, it's hilarious because
one issue is the fact the Fed is pursuing a policy very similar to Alan Greenspan's, where he would give shadow banks easy money to buy bonds, which is what they're doing to BlackRock, and pumping a large shadow bank to own houses, which could bubble up like Lehman. Yeah. Look, there are a lot of problems with our modern economy, but also I don't think the solution to the problems in our modern economy or the problems of directing our economy are related to caring about trans people. I think you can care about more than one thing at a time.
Okay, let's put healthcare aside for a second, because here's the other thing. The far left will push ideas that are not popular with the general public, right? Yes. So I think that protecting, marginalized communities, protecting the transgender community is important. However, when you move out of or move far away from making sure that they are not denied housing, making sure that they're not denied healthcare, when you move into like these more fringe areas of there was a story out of the UK this week, blows my mind. There was an LGBTQ group in the UK who suggested that instead of referring to vaginas as vaginas because it might be offensive to transgender men, one of the potential replacements or substitutes could be bonus hole.
Oh, no. Bonus hole?
Yeah, bonus hole. And listen, people don't like this stuff, okay? They might not be on Twitter talking about how much they do.
Yeah, people don't like that. But no one's telling them they have to use the term bonus hole. This is not... Hapsley, I'd prefer you subscribe on the .gg site, because I literally get double the money if you do. You don't think that's true? No, actually, what she's saying is true. There was an organization in the UK that suggested alternate terms that might be more suitable if you're a trans man. Because sometimes trans people feel very sensitively about their genitals and don't want them referred to in a more traditional manner. So the reason bonus hole is being suggested is because other terminology might make trans men uncomfortable. But no one is saying we are replacing the word vagina with bonus hole. If you are a woman, you no longer have a vagina, you have a bonus hole. No one is saying that. That's not at all what is being conveyed. So, we need to make it clear here that that is not what is being... It's not like there's a council, like a queer council, where they're like, from now on, lesbians have bonus holes! There's no order from on high. It's just a suggestion if a trans man is feeling uncomfortable about their genitalia. You know? This isn't difficult to understand. Oh, it wasn't even a leftist organization. It was a cervical cancer charity that made the suggestion. Those goddamn political cervical cancer charities. You are subbed, Hapsley. Bonus hole is pretty goddamn funny, bread into toast. It's true. It is inherently comedic, and I will not apologize for that. There are better terminology. There's better terminology out there. We can do better for our trans mask allies than bonus hole, okay? Man cave is so amazing. True. If it's cervical cancer, what if they're talking about hysterectomies? Could be. But like, all I'm saying is that no one's telling Anna she has to use bonus hole for vagina. That's not a thing. That's not true.
Dislike this stuff, but on average, every normie woman I've talked to is like, I can't stand this stuff, right? So what Jake and I recently talked.
Well, damn. Good thing it's not for normie women. Isn't it? It's so good that that's not what it's for.
About it, I think we talked about it in the context of trans athletes or whatever, and it was, hey, we got to be a little more strategic, because if you do this, if you start pushing the mainstream Democratic Party to run their campaigns on these like fringe issues, they might not get reelected, or they might not get elected at all if they're running against a Republican in a district. And the response, and it's the same response we got when we made the same point about the stupid prison abolition movement, is we don't care. We don't care. This is the right thing to do. We don't care. And it's like, oh, okay, but then you complain about what Republicans are doing in various red states. So do you want more Republicans to get elected? And do you want more of these, look, I think that some of these laws that have been passed in various red states, for instance, banning gender affirming care for adults, between the ages of 18 to 25, I think that's wrong. I think adults should be able to make a decision about their own bodies. I do think that there is a worthwhile debate when it comes to, hormone blockers and cross-sex hormones for children, and we should have that debate in good faith. But I don't want the pendulum to swing far to the right. I would venture to say the left feels the same way, except I'm not so sure. Because to them, going on Twitter and patting themselves on the back for being the most pure is more important to them than strategy. It's more important to them than actually accomplishing the policies that they claim to want to accomplish. Every time I make that point, they'll be like, oh, but you don't even know. There are people on the ground, activists on the ground, working hard to make this.
Well, because Jim Monkey Maker, there are other ways, as Bernie Sanders has pointed out, there are other ways of dealing with inflation than what the Fed is doing. But the people who work at the Fed want to make the money on Wall Street, so they're pumping up Wall Street instead of actually helping people on the ground. That's it. That's the long and short of it.
This happened, and it's like, I mean, I'm not blind. I see what's happening in the country right now. So you can tell me about your imaginary on the ground activists making real change happen as we speak, but I'm not buying it. So it is what it is, and they can get as offended as they want. They can get as upset as they want. I don't really care. I'm not a mouthpiece for anyone, any political party, any political group. My obligation is to share.
Hey.
Wills passes to Thompson. Thompson fakes. Shoots. BOOOOOOOOONUSHOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOOO
oh. Yo. Thank you for the $15 dono, Paladin. I appreciate you and your goofy antics.
The facts of the story with my audience to the best of my ability, and then do good faith analysis on those stories. And if they don't like my analysis, they can make whatever decision they want about whether they support or watch the show. And that's why I say I might be engaging in a little bit of self-sabotage, because I don't know what the outcome of all of this is going to be. You know, there is no big play here. I'm not leaving TYT. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I don't know what the outcome will eventually be, to be honest.
I have a kind of contentious take. I'm curious how you feel about it. Where, I look at you call them the small, loud minority on Twitter. That we have this kind of like far left identity obsessed. We don't care about practicality, kind of purity spiraling group people. And the reason I think that this is happening is that for whatever reason, there's been this shift among a lot of young people, especially online, where there's a shift away from the philosophy of liberalism into more of a socialistic philosophy. And do you see that happening from your perception?
I do. I think that to some extent I subscribe to that. And look, honestly, I'm at a point where I want to be a little more pragmatic because I want to accomplish something. I want to improve people's lives, as much as we possibly can. And when you have a maximalist approach, you're less likely to make that happen, and you turn a lot of people off. Because they're in this like echo chamber on Twitter, I think they're under the assumption that most Americans agree with them. I think most Americans want a mixed economy. We're currently a mixed economy. I definitely want to socialize healthcare. That's like the area that I would say I'm the furthest left. But I don't agree with nihilism. I never have. I don't agree with burning down our institutions because they're inherently racist or they're inherently this or that. I think that some institutions could use reform. I was totally on board for reforming policing. I was never once on board. I never once called for abolishing police. And so the abolish movement, I think, is insane. And I think the fact that I'm willing to say that has led to a lot of people hating me. And I don't care at all.
It's interesting because, personally, I'm not in favor. Yeah, I want a public option, but I'm not in favor of economic socialism. But it's interesting to me that the movement.
I'm not in favor of economic socialism. But also a public option would be nice. So you are in favor of economic socialism to a degree. Let's not be dishonest here. Zoop! Hello.
No senpai, don't put it in the bonus hole.
Jesus.
H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O-H-O. BWA.
BWA indeed. This is what I get for leaving on text to speech. God damn it, Paladin.
Movement, it seems like currently, it's kind of like the socialist energy in America right now seems to have drastically shifted away from economic questions entirely and to just to take that kind of lens and put it on these cultural issues, specifically race. And that is very bizarre to me. It's like we just kind of lost, and this came up a lot with the affirmative action Supreme Court ruling just happened, where I understand people criticizing the idea that they don't think a colorblind approach would necessarily bring about racial equality or whatever. Like, even if I disagree with that, I understand what they're saying. The thing that's kind of frightening to me is people saying that the goal of colorblindness is either not likely, impossible, or not even desirable. And to me, that's a drastic shift. Like, okay, I understand you want to do things to get there, but the goal should still be kind of this liberal notion of colorblindness at the end of the day.
Well, I would posit this question.
Well, to be fair, there's never been the liberal notion of colorblindness is like a bastardization of what MLK Jr. was talking about. It's not the desirable outcome.
When the culture wanted colorblindness, when that was like I guess in general the agreed upon goal, I feel like race relations were better, like much better than they are today, right?
Yes.
So,
dude,
look, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm a little scared or I'm afraid of talking to people who are outside of my race because I don't know.
Dude, what the fuck? I'm sorry, we're gonna back this up a couple seconds.
The agreed upon, the culture wanted colorblindness when that was like I guess in general the agreed upon goal. I feel like race relations were better, like much better than they are today, right?
Yes.
So, look, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes
race relations weren't better with the colorblind approach. People just weren't fucking aware of the issue because of the blindness. When you're blind, you can't identify the issue. Visually speaking. Hey, Serious Bread, you've walked into the freshest of hells.
Sometimes I'm a little scared or I'm afraid of talking to people who are outside of my race because I don't know if I'm going to unintentionally step in it, right?
Yeah.
There's and I hate that.
Right.
Like there's this I don't know, it's frigid because if all of the message is toward me and people who, I'm Armenian, but still they call me white passing, so just got to go with that, right? If people who look like me are constantly told you are inherently racist.
Jack, if bonus hole is the term for trans men, would that make bonus pole the term for trans women?
No. Next question.
Okay, you are inherently a bad person. I mean, if that's the start, and I had this debate with Jenk when it came to our rhetoric in regard to the other side, right? If the starting off point is
sorry, I need to back that up.
Because if all of the message is toward me and people who, I'm Armenian, but still they call me white passing, so just got to go with that, right? If people who look like me are constantly told you are inherently racist. Okay, you are inherently a bad person. I mean, if that's the start, and I had this debate with Jenk when it came to our rhetoric in regard to the other side, right? If the starting off point is you are trash and we think you're evil,
Yeah,
then
totally.
how does that? You're never going to move in a better.
I don't think. Okay. I don't think that is the position of people who are criticizing. Let me put it this way. I'm sure that you can find fringe groups like Black Hebrew Israelites, for example, who would argue that. Who would argue what Anna is saying here. I don't think that it is at all representative here of the people she's talking about. I don't think this is accurate at all.
Direction. You're not going to move the country in a better direction. You're not going to improve race relations. You're going to make it worse. And that is what I see happening. I think a lot of the division is due to the backlash to that kind of rhetoric. And I think I think racism exists for sure. Do I think the majority of white people are racist? Do I think white people are inherently racist? No, I do not. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, that's a racist stereotype.
Yeah. I mean, it's just as racist to say, black people are inherently dangerous and violent, right? That's a disgusting and racist thing to say. Why is it okay to have some generalized stereotype about white people? I think that's wrong as well.
Look, when we covered a lot of the critical race theory debate that was going around, it's kind of gone away momentarily, but I imagine it'll probably come back with the election coming.
And look, guess what? There are harmful ways you can treat white people. You can do harm with racial bias against white people. It's just that the systemic racism isn't working against white people in the vast majority of instances. I hesitate to say all because I'm sure you could find one or two, but like, by and large, when people are talking about this, they're talking about the systemic issues, not the individual biases. And yes, individually, with biased racial beliefs, you can harm white people or a white person. But we're usually talking about the systemic issues.
Because obviously they're going to use it to hit DeSantis. But I mean, a lot of, and Sitch.
Oh, wait. Interesting. 10-letter name. I have occupied the same position that Anna is peddling right here. It was before I went to therapy and before I could differentiate between people who weaponize progressive language and marginalized people at large. Like, I understand what she's pointing to, but that ain't it, chief. Yeah, like, I think that there are bad actors on the left who are able to weaponize progressive language while pushing reactionary and ultimately bad ideas. I think that is absolutely true. But that in no way represents the vast majority of people on the left.
Can speak better to this than me because he's read a lot of the books on critical race theory. It seems like critical race theory is trying to promote this negative stereotype of whites, that whites are just inherently racist and that liberal society will
Okay, but when critical race theory is talking about people being inherently racist, what they mean is that people grow up within society, and society at large, or in the pockets they grow up in if they're more isolated, their society has these ingrained ideologies about like other groups of people. When it talks about people being inherently racist, when critical race theory talks about that, it's talking about how society perpetuates these racial biases. It's not saying that, oh, you are born white and therefore you are unable ever to attain any understanding of racism and you should shut the fuck up because you're evil, whitey. That's not the lesson of critical race theory.
never be able to be colorblind because of this inherent racism that they have. And they've even labeled it whiteness, which is like, we've had people on the show before that have tried to tell us, no, whiteness is just, that's just neutral. And I'm like, well, I mean, if we were talking about criminality and wanted to label it blackness, don't you think people would kind of be thinking that's a little racist? Like, we probably shouldn't do that. So, but there so many people who study this critical race theory stuff, they're like, they're working on their PhD in it, like they're fully invested in the system. They've got some advisor that has studied it for 35 years. Like, you're never going to change their minds about this stuff. It's kind of, I don't necessarily know where we turn on it.
I mean, look, for academics who have dedicated their lives to that type of curriculum, yeah, I mean, they've dedicated their lives to it. It's pretty deeply ingrained in their minds. It's kind of difficult to reverse that. But, the whole thing, look, I don't agree with CRT. I don't agree with that theory. I don't, whatever. But my issue with the right was that they were making it seem as though CRT, which is a graduate level curriculum, is being taught in like elementary schools and stuff. And so I would have preferred for them to be a little more precise in what they mean, right? Because if they want to say that certain elements of critical race theory have now infiltrated mainstream public school curriculum, okay, that's an interesting point to make. Can you show me where? Show me specific examples. Then we're having an actual conversation about it. But overall, I think that it's incredibly divisive in a pluralistic society to make generalizations about any group of people, to refer to any group of people as inherently evil or racist or whatever the accusation is. I think that you need to take people as individuals and judge them by their actions as individuals. And do I think that there are individuals in the country who believe in white supremacy and all of that? Absolutely. Obviously we have, a pretty dark history when it comes to the way that we treated Black people in this country. I acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the issues that I'm also having recently is this notion that there has been no improvement. Oh, yeah. Everything has been the same. There's, those race to dinner ladies, like they, they're special.
You did a great job of framing
those what for dinner ladies? What? I don't know what she's talking about, but like, yeah, it is very bizarre to me that she's talking about how she's on eggshells around anyone of a different race because she might say something bad, you know? And yet she's going to go on and talk about when things were better for black people. Yeah.
The critical race theory, very honestly, I think, about, obviously critical race theory, no one's pulling out a book by Derek Bell in 2nd grade and saying, hey, we're going to study critical race theory. Isn't it so much more intellectually stimulating to understand both the right and the left argument? I feel like it is rather than just straw man. But real quick on the critical race theory, I do think, and this is where I think they do have an argument, like they do these like privilege walks where they have all the kids stand out in the quad and they list off things like, is English your second language? Well, I don't know. I kind of think like if you're bilingual, you have an advantage over me. I only speak one language, English, and frankly, not very good. So I feel like if you're bilingual, why am I the one that speaks one language taking a step forward and the bilingual kid is standing behind me? And that, I mean, you can make a direct link to CRT and that stuff.
Well, it's interesting that you provide that example. So English was my second language. My parents came to the country as refugees in the late 70s. They escaped Soviet era Armenia, came to the United States, did not speak a word of English. They learned English eventually, right? But it took some time. And so in the household, between the time I was born and the time I finally went to elementary school, all they spoke was Armenian. All I knew was Armenian. And I remember before there was like an entrance exam, I had a meeting with like one of the counselors at this elementary school, and she would like pull up cards that had letters on it, English letters on it. And she's like, do you know what this letter is? And I'd be like, no. And I remember leaving that feeling like garbage. Like I left that and I was like, I'm dumb. I don't know anything. I remember crying and like whatever. And then what I did was I forced myself to wake up super early as a kid to watch Sesame Street. And that's how I learned English. Anyway, I give you that anecdote about myself because it's a very personal thing. And luckily I have the kind of personality and the intellectual curiosity to like want to learn and to want to be better. And there might be some other people who, for them, English being a second language is more of a challenge, right? They might have more difficulty in learning or grasping a new language. So I can understand how that could be seen through the lens of privilege. But I think you also make a valid point. Once you've learned English in America and you still have the skills of a second language, in my case, it would be Armenian, that does tend to be a highlight or something that could be highlighted on your resumes or your CVs. So valid point. It just really depends on where the person is in their lives.
Well, if their point is to teach people that some people have better advantages than other people, I'm not necessarily against that. Where they make it racial and the need to make it racial and create all these racial stereotypes around it, I just feel like, what are we doing here? We're taking steps backwards. Why are we doing this?
Also, I'm not sure.
Wait. But they're not creating the racial stereotypes. Wait, point me to the racial stereotype lab the racial stereotype factory where they're cranking them out, guy. They're not doing that. Those are already like ingrained into society. Sesame Street was a huge thing to have on TV.
Like that, teaching kids like, oh, this kid is privileged over you. I'm not sure the psychological effects that's going to have necessarily on the children. And it's kind of
but also like the bullying that commonly takes place on campuses across the country. I mean, you're providing more fodder for that.
Yes,
I don't think that's really a helpful way to talk about race dynamics in the country. I don't know. I experienced none of that when I was in public school, and I feel pretty lucky that I grew up. Look, it wasn't perfect, but I do feel lucky that I grew up in the '90s because that was probably the peak of the attempts to live in a colorblind society, and I just feel like race relations were better then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not obviously.
Oh my God. Yeah, race relations were way better in the 90s. Hey kids, Google Rodney King, okay? Google Rodney King video to get an accurate view of race relations in the 90s.
Obviously not perfect, but what I'm experiencing now is, again, incredibly divisive, and I don't like the generalizations about, like white women, white people in general, the fact that, there's every institution, racism is deeply ingrained in every institution, we've got to burn it all down, and it's like, what are you guys doing right now? Like, what are you really doing, and what are you really advocating for?
Yeah, and it's like, I agree that there's always messaging problems on both sides, when the right says like the CRT and everything, and it's like, well, yeah, they're not reading Kimberly Crenshaw papers necessarily in second grade, but there'll be some specific element, and yeah, it'd probably be better if they were specific and say, oh, they're doing privilege walks, or they're talking about how there's inherent racism built into white society, or they're saying that we want to deconstruct whiteness. There was some school, I forget where this was, whereas like in elementary school or middle school, they had a book that was like, it had a contract with devil horns that said, don't shake hands with the contract of whiteness or something like absurd like this. And so, I mean, it's happening all across, it was happening, like elements of it were happening across the country. And the problem is like, the same token that, the right's too overbroad maybe with saying everything's CRT or being broad, like the left had kind of just the exact opposite, or not even the left really, the mainstream media had the kind of exact opposite approach where they're saying, oh, none of this is happening. This is all like a fantasy. This is all a fantasy concocted by racists because they don't want to teach about slavery. They don't want to teach about Black history in America. Right. It's like, that's clearly not what they're talking, or at least I don't think that's clearly what's happening in these situations.
Right, I bought into that narrative, hook, line, and sinker, right? Like the narrative of they want to erase any curriculum, any teachings about racism, about slavery, about the Jim Crow.
They're doing that in Florida! They're literally banning the Diary of Anne Frank! What are you talking about? Oh my god, dude. There's a reason why textbooks in the South talk about how the Civil War was about states' rights instead of preserving slavery. There's a reason for that, Anna. And it didn't just happen because. Holy fuck, dude. Dude. Holy shit. As a person of color, I grew up with family telling me things are better now, though not perfect, than before when people ignored things. This is a topic we talk about often, and the fact she doesn't know this, but talks about it so confidently speaks to her privilege. Holy fucking shit. Color blindness is so fucking stupid. Yeah. Chat. Martin Luther King Jr. advocated for a non-colorblind view of society. Okay? Martin Luther King did that. Martin Luther King Jr. did that. Okay? And I'm going to paraphrase here, but he essentially said a society that has done something special to harm the black person must now do something special to help the black person. I'm paraphrasing, okay? But that flies directly in the face of colorblindness as a concept. And it's just like, dude, we gotta recognize that as a society. And it just seems to me like she's like holding up these 90s days of yore as like perfect racial relations. And if I'm gonna be a little uncharitable here, I think it's because in the 90s she was a child and didn't have to deal with racial relations. You know, like the 90s were like the culmination of like jailing and the mass incarceration of like black and brown people. We got like super predator laws out of that. God damn, dude. Also, Serious Bread, congrats on being on HRT for over a year now. And I'm not gonna, I'm glad that I could be one of the people who gave you the confidence to transition. I know that these are very scary times to do that in, so good on you for staying true to yourself, okay?
Pro era, and I feel like a sucker, right? I just do. And right. Yeah, and I don't know. Like, look, I can't control others. All I can do is control my own behavior. And so I've been kind of thinking of things through that lens. And the other thing I'll say is I have luckily, a very full life. And I have many friends outside of this space, outside of work. And they have really helped to ground me and give me the courage I need to do my job the way that I see fit moving forward. Because if your entire life is about this, about, what you do, the people who surround you at work, and if it's about making sure that you maintain those relationships, then their pressure on you to say certain things that you might not believe in is going to be far more effective. And so I've kind of, I use
Are
Twitter
you experiencing that?
for sure. Yeah.
Are they
yeah. And I
pressuring
don't-
you? Are you getting eye rolls when you're saying, look, you're really kind of misrepresenting the Republican argument here?
Well, look, they do this really great thing where they don't actually approach me privately to have these conversations. They do me the favor of putting out monetized videos condemning me for being a very naughty girl. And so,
Well, wait, that situation though is like detractors. I'm talking about like in a work environment, like which would be much worse, obviously.
right. Well, so
So
far,
that's
no one's,
Go
so
ahead.
far, no one's approached me. No one's approached me to tell me like I can't believe you're saying this, or I can't, I'm very angry at you. No one's done that.
Okay.
However, 2 people have reported me to HR. So
What?
Yeah.
What?
Dude. I mean, that is what HR is for, I guess. Good on
Already
them.
getting reports
Something
to
specific
HR?
or just a general?
my tweet saying that I'd like to be referred to, that I personally would like to be referred to as a woman and not a birthing person, that upset some people, and they reported me to HR. I'm happy to report that HR's response was, she didn't do anything wrong. So, she can't get in trouble for sharing her opinion on this. And the other thing is, like, I would never do that, man. I mean, there are so many different voices at TYT. Time to time, there are statements made that I find objectionable or I disagree with. And if it rises to the occasion of me having to say something, I'll approach that person and talk to them about it. I would never report them to HR. Like, what are we doing here? We're doing political news and analysis. Like, by definition, we're supposed to share our genuine and sincere opinions. Now, if I was doing videos saying horrific, hateful, racist things and I was targeting individuals, then that would be different. I've never done that and I never will.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it would be different if you were targeting individuals. Yes, that would make it far more serious. It's still bad, though, that you're making the generalized comments. You know? That's still bad? Like, yeah. There's a comparison I could make here. I'm not going to.
You brought up a really interesting point I never really thought of in terms of the polarization that's happening right now, where, for you, you're saying how you have friends outside of the internet, outside of, politics, that you can, kind of rely on emotionally for support, where kind of in our modern era, a lot of people, their primary relationships come, I think, entirely from friends they make on the internet and from Discord and spaces like this. And so since we're kind of like splintering off, like we're no longer in a time period where like everyone knows their neighbor and people have like a lot of generalized interests because they're just kind of like friends with the people physically around them. We're more specialized. We're friends with the people that share our specific interests, whether it be, some kind of video game or movies or whatever, or in this case, politics. And so since so many people have these only specialized friendships around politics, on people they meet online, that's going to make it like almost impossible for people to change their mind or to buck some kind of narrative, because everyone that they know, their entire social structure, their entire support group is based around a political narrative, around a political ideology.
100%. Look, this is hyperbolic talk, so I want to like make sure I mention that before I say it. But I told Jank on multiple occasions, I'm like, I feel like I just woke up and got out of a cult, right? Because it is a little bit cultish, and I don't think it's literally a cult, but I think what happens is exactly like the dynamics that you just described is exactly right. And people are scared. Like, we as humans, we thrive in our social groups, and we need to have that social group in order. Like, it's just how we evolved. And so I get it. I understand the mentality behind it. But there were certain things going on in my personal life that I'm very grateful for, because it didn't keep me grounded enough, but at least kept me grounded to the point where I had a way of seeing the other side to some extent. So I'll tell you a few examples. Like, my husband's Cuban. He is not like a conservative Cuban guy. In fact, he was pretty apolitical when we met. He's become more politicized as we've been together, but nonetheless, his family, hardcore Republicans. Like, they just are, And at first, like in 2016, when we got married, I remember I would get into like these super uncomfortable fights and debates with them, and I was just like, I had in my mind like all of these made up ideas of what they believed. And finally, I just decided, look, I love my husband. I don't want to like put him in an awkward position of like having his wife constantly in conflicts with his family. So let me just calm down and just try to understand where they're coming from. And then what I started to do was, instead of like challenging them, whenever they would talk about something like healthcare, for instance, so they think everything Democrats do is like
socialism.
By definition, like they're all socialists, they're all communists, they're all, And I look, considering the trauma they experienced, I get where they're coming from in that regard. But I wanted to kind of like convince them that's not the case. So instead of being combative, when we were talking about healthcare, for instance, it was hilarious because one of his family members accidentally admitted that when she was pregnant and she had to go on Medicaid, that it was the best healthcare she's ever had, right?
Oh no.
And like, look, instead of going like, aha, I gotcha, right? Like, antagonizing her for it, I was like, you know what, you make a really good point. Like, free at the point of service, and I'm just trying to get her to absorb and really fully understand what she just said, right? And so I think there's a way to talk to people. I think there's a way to find.
I think there's a big difference, though, between knowing how to talk to people effectively who are strangers to you, and knowing how to talk effectively to members of your family. Members of your family are going to be more reachable to you than strangers are. And, like, talking about Republicans in the abstract is not, like, it's not unreasonable to say these people can't be reached. They can be, the caveat to that is that they can be reached by people who know them personally. That is true. But also, if you're, like, someone in our position, like Anna or myself, if you're someone in our position, it is a waste of our time and effort to try and pull conservatives over. It's a better use of our time and effort to pull liberals into, you know, our line of thinking, you know? That's the better use of our time. Especially when it comes to, like, organizing for elections, you know?
Find common ground. There was this actress, I always forget her name, but she's beautiful. She's in that show, that HBO show about rich people vacationing. White Lotus, the first season of White Lotus. There's this one actress who had posted photos of her mother's birthday on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And in that photo, or in the series of photos she posted, you could see family members in the back wearing, like, MAGA hats. And the amount of backlash this actress received was intense.
Wow.
And they were mad at her for refusing to condemn and cut off her family members.
Ridiculous.
And I was like, no, you don't do that. Like, how do you think you're going to win politically by doing that?
Right.
By, like, segregating people based on their political ideology.
Yeah.
The way that we come to conclusions or agreements or policies that could actually work to improve people's lives is by engaging in these conversations in good faith. And yes, obviously, considering the fact that not everyone agrees, you do have to compromise on certain things. But improving things, you know, maybe it's not going to be exactly what you want, but improving things is still improving things. And the idea that you should just cut anyone off if they don't agree with you 100% runs counter to building the broad coalitions necessary to accomplish some of these policies.
Yeah.
And so I just see all of that I just see it clearly now. And again, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, like, my whole theory of change is so different today versus what it was in, like, even 2016.
This is all great.
Cool.
Totally
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Have you read any of Jonathan Haidt's work?
That's why I
Yes.
was going to bring that up.
Okay, really?
Oh,
You've
yeah,
read
oh,
Righteous
yeah.
Mind? Yeah.
So you know the
Well, I
term
just
morality
started-
binds and blinds?
Okay, so I just finished Coddling of the American Mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Catastrophizing. Like, Coddling
Yep,
the American
yep.
Mind is great. Yeah.
It's a very good book. I just started The Rational Mind.
The Righteous Mind.
Oh, The Righteous
Yeah,
Mind, my bad.
yeah.
I literally just got
Oh,
the
wow.
library audiobook of it, so I'm going to start it after this
Mhm.
podcast, actually. So
Wow.
I'm
Nice.
working on it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, we're huge Haidt fans. Like, we kind of look at the Righteous Mind as like the cheat code almost to understanding like people's political opinions. So that's great.
Yes, I don't
Yeah.
think I would understand conservatives at all if it wasn't for that book, The Righteous Mind. Haidt kind of, I hate using the term red pill because it's like,
Cool. So, for those of you who don't have context for this, The Coddling of the American Mind is a book by Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt. And its full title is The Coddling of the American Mind, How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. Is essentially about how using trigger warnings and safe spaces is destroying an entire generation of students. So, letting people know that there's going to be sexual assault content in something is coddling them too much. Letting people know that they are in a safe space to ask questions or talk about specific issues that they might not otherwise be able to openly talk about in other settings is coddling an entire generation of Americans. Yeah, it's yeah. It plays into this conservative idea that university students in the modern day are being essentially treated like babies, are being robbed of their power and agency by the bubble wrapping of everything in America, of all the hard ideas. And it's just like, I mean, I guess you could just show a movie to a room full of people without telling them that there's rape in it, but I mean, like, it'd probably be more decent of you and probably allow people to more effectively engage with the content if you gave them a preface of that, you know? Yeah, like, if this is an issue at all, which, like, I don't think it is, it's very, very small.
So bastardized these days. Yeah, actually, in the book, he uses the red pill metaphor. But
Mhm.
he says, you know, we're all kind of living in these moral matrices where you know,
Totally.
we're not interacting with other people in other matrices. But when people talk about being red pilled, a lot of people just talk about, well, I got out of the progressive matrix and I moved into the conservative matrix now. And I think, well, you like in the movie, they left the matrix. Remember?
Right.
So I